I have been staring at this notebook for far too long, just wanting to set it up, so that is what we are doing today. Hello team, today we are setting up my 2023 everyday bullet journal in this absolutely gorgeous notebook from Archer and Olive. I love the glitter, I love the snowflake, it is beautiful. Opening it up though and getting on into it, the first thing we're actually going to do is not write in the notebook. Instead, I'm taking a piece of dot grid paper from my Archer and Olive notepad, and I'm going to make a year at a glance. Now you might be wondering, Jess, why do you not just put the year at a glance on the first page of the actual notebook? Well, this is because I don't want to have to write this calendar out when I come to migrate into my next journal for 2023. I already know that this notebook is not going to be lasting me the entire year, so rather than setting up a year at a glance in the notebook and then having to rewrite it in my next one, I'm setting this one up as a removable year at a glance. So putting it on this separate piece of paper, and then I'll washi tape it into the front cover of my notebook so that I can move it when I move into my next journal. It feels very odd to be thinking about my next journal when I'm not even in this one yet, but hey, I am nothing if not a planner. Normally before setting up a year at a glance, I would go in with a pencil first and mark in when the first and last day of each month was, just as a way to help me avoid potential mistakes as best as possible. But this time I was obviously feeling adventurous and decided not to do that. Thankfully it wasn't too disastrous. I do have an extra day on the calendar. I wonder if you can see which month it's in. This small mistake doesn't really bother me, so I don't actually go and correct it. I know that the day isn't supposed to be there, though the mistake could have been avoided if I just used my free printable of a year at a glance. If you didn't want to write out all of the numbers to set up your year at a glance, then you can use that one. It is linked in the description box below. It has 144 different options depending on what kind of styling you like. But now as the year at a glance is done, it's time to attach it to the journal. As mentioned, I want this one to be removable, so I'm just washi taping it into the front cover. And then I can write in my nameplate page. As can be expected, that one doesn't take very long either, we're just writing my name out. And I also put in some super simple little branches as a way of decoration, and I'll be using those later in the setup for further decoration too. Before we flip over to the next page, I'm actually going to set up another tool that I want to use in this journal, which is a grid spacing ruler. For this one, I again just use a piece of spare dot grid paper, and I've cut it to the size of the length of the journal. On one side, I'm going to have the vertical spacing, and on the other, I'll have the horizontal spacing. So starting with the vertical spacing, I go and put the numbers 1 through 38 down the side of the piece of paper to represent the 38 grid spaces that are found vertically in my journal. From here, I can also put in some dividing lines so that I can easily find the halfway and third way and quarter way points, and I do each of those in a different color so that they're nice and easy to distinguish. I've kept the color palette for the ruler and the year at a glance to be fairly neutral so that it won't clash with anything that I put in my next journal setup as well. Flipping over, we have a similar thing on the back, but for this one we only have 26 spaces to represent the 26 spaces horizontally in my notebook. And for this one, I just mark in the halves and the thirds because those are the typical sizes that I like to use. I may at some stage also go and mark in the calendar spacing, because all of my monthly calendars I set up in the same way to have 6 boxes across and 6 boxes down for each of the calendar boxes. For now though, that one is finished, we can tuck it into the back pocket. And flipping over to the first dot grid page of the notebook though, this is where I'm going to be putting a quote page. To do the decoration on this one and all of the other pages of the setup, I'm using this red notepad paper from the Archer and Olive Rainbow Notepad, which I've turned into a buffalo plaid piece of paper. Rather than sticking in that paper as I went, I decided to cut it all up at once and stick it on all of the pages of the setup, just because batching tasks like that makes it a little bit faster when you're trying to set up as many pages as I'm doing. So doing all of the cutting at once, doing all of the sticking at once, and putting down all of my washi tape. Because the notepad paper is a little bit shorter than the full length of the page, but I wanted the buffalo plaid to span the full length, I did have to go and colour in the page just using my Tombow in colour 856. This just made it easier to continue with that buffalo plaid into the parts of the paper that wouldn't have been covered by my red piece of paper. Hopefully that makes sense. In terms of actually drawing out the buffalo plaid though, because this was done by hand, not necessarily something I recommend, it is time consuming, but I love the way it looks when you hand draw it. Of course you could just find a reference picture online and print it off, but my printer kinda sucks, so I would much rather just draw it out myself. The process for this just includes putting in a whole bunch of little boxes, so in every second cell of every second row of the dot grid paper, and then colouring in those boxes fully in black. To do that, I decided to use an Artline calligraphy pen just because it has a chisel tip, so it made it a little easier to get it nice and close to those edges without going over. After this, it's time for the fiddly part, which is drawing in all of the diagonal lines. And those diagonal lines go between every single one of those black boxes, both vertically and horizontally. That gives you the full sheet of the buffalo plaid paper, which I could cut up and stick into my notebook. Whenever I start a new bullet journal, I typically like the first page to be a quote page, and this one is no different. The quote that I've gone for this time is "The grass is greener where you water it." And I'm putting that in with a simple monoline cursive. Though this style of cursive is not my usual, so it does take me a little bit longer to pen out compared to just my regular writing. I thought this quote was a really nice fitting one for the new year, and it aligns well with some of the things that I want to work on for myself for 2023. To finish it off though, I did go and put in 2 of those little branches that we had from before, and then it was over the page and onto the future log. If you've seen my other 2023 journal setup, you'll remember that in that one we didn't have the future log because that was in my yearly collections journal. I prefer having my future log in my everyday journal, which is what I call this one, because the purpose of this journal is very much about keeping plans and to-dos. So having the reference of what's happening when in the future is a good thing to have here. We're continuing with that simple monoline cursive for each of the headers for the month, and I also used a Tombow dual brush marker in a light grey colour in 89 to highlight every second line. I just like the way it makes the page look more full. This style of future log is super simple because you don't have to write out any of the mini calendars, especially because I already have them on the year at a glance, so in any journal that I have a year at a glance, I don't typically include mini calendars on the future log. That one is set up though, and we can flip on over to what is going to be my level 10 life page on the left, and my actions page for my level 10 life on the right. If you hadn't heard of it before, the level 10 life is an idea that was popularized by Hal Elrod in his book The Miracle Morning, and it's effectively about the idea of, for each category of our lives, we want to be at a level 10, where 10 is the best and 0 really, really sucks. On this page that I'm setting up here though, this is where I'm going to rate myself out of 10 for each of my different life areas. And then on the actions page on the right hand side, I can outline a couple of things that I could do to improve my score in each of those areas. I have never once rated myself at a level 10. I'm a very harsh marker, so I know that there's going to be something that I can do to make myself happier in those areas. In terms of the life areas that I like to keep track of, from top to bottom, these are physical health, mental health, physical environment, personal development, financial health, professional health, partner relationship, social health, and family relationships. I wanted each of the terms to be a 2-barrel thing so that then it looked balanced when I wrote it out. Otherwise, typically I'd probably just write finances and partner rather than partner relationship, but I do like the way that it looks having 2 words for each of those labels. Of course, if you wanted more information about the level 10 life, I do have a separate video about that one, and any other video related to this one can be found linked in the description box below. With that one set up though, we are flipping over to my goal planning and action plan page. And you might be thinking, Jess, didn't we just look at an action plan? You are not wrong, we did. But those were the actions specifically related to my level 10 life, rather than to my goal in particular. We're going to talk more about my goal setting in an upcoming video, but in general I have 2 main goals for 2023, and one of those is going to get outlined here. This spread is really simple to set up because I'm not putting in any pre-planned sections, just writing out the headers for each of the pages. When it comes to filling it in though, I know that on the left I'm going to outline what the goal is, why I want to work on it, and also have a space to do some brainstorming regarding action steps. And then the action plan section on the right hand side is going to be more of those individual steps that I can take to actually work on the goal. In naively thinking that this page was done, we're flipping on over. I do come back to this page though to add in some gold accents in a bit, but the page we've turned to here is going to be for my content planning. One of the things that I've been trying in my current bullet journal are monthly content plans, and I've been finding them really useful, just to make sure that I know what is getting posted on which platform on which day of the month. This helps me space my content out better to make sure that I don't have any kind of overwhelming pinch points. And it also just helps make sure I get all the things that I want to get done. We're continuing with that simple monoline cursive to put in the initials for each of the days of the week, and also bringing in those little branch designs. Repeated elements like this, the same font and the same decorative steps, those are the things that I like to use to make the pages of my setups look cohesive. For the calendar itself though, I'm using two of my different dot markers, one in grey and one in red. The red is used to represent the days for that month, so on this one, the days in January, and the grey dots are for the days outside of the month. This just gives me an extra week on each of those calendars, so I can see what's coming up. I set up 4 calendars for January through to April, and now we're flipping back to add in those gold details that I mentioned from before. Originally I was just going to freehand these, but the first line I drew was kind of wobbly, so I did end up using a ruler. I didn't do anything to fix the freehanded line, it's not that bad, but because the line's a little bit longer than just a couple of grid space boxes, the wobbliness stands out, so I didn't want to have that in there. Flipping all the way forward past those content calendars though, and then we are on to my 101 things space and my reset processes. The 101 things list is a list of 101 things that I want to get done in 2023, and while the list itself is held in my yearly collections journal, this page in particular is where I'm going to map out which of my 101 things I want to do in each of the months that should be held in this journal. If you hadn't already guessed, I'm expecting this journal will last me about 4 months. For the reset process space, this is going to be divided into 3 sections, the top one being for daily reset processes, the one on the left being for weekly reset processes, and then the one on the right for my monthly reset process. I do want to consider a little bit further what these reset processes entail before I write the steps in, although at the moment I have a pretty good understanding of what I want my weekly and my monthly one to be. I'd like to think about them just a little bit more before I commit it to pen in my journal. Just like I did on the actions page for my level 10 life, you'll have seen that I used washi tape to mask the page to put in these really crisp and clean headers. And while these ones are red, the ones on the action page from before were grey. And I kind of wish I had have done those ones in red too. I think they would have just standed out a bit nicer. And I do end up using the red from here on out. This spread is done though, and we can flip on over to what is going to be my media consumed / check this out page. In previous setups, I've had the media consumed and the check this out sections as separate sections, but something that I've done previously is had them combined, and I thought I'd bring that back for this journal. Otherwise, I just end up writing things down on the check this out section, and then having to rewrite them on the media consumed section anyway, when I inevitably go and watch or listen to the thing. I figured I'd just skip the rewriting step and have them in the same list. This one is set up in an Alastair style though, so I'm going to draw in a little icon to represent each of the different types of media. Those are going to be going at the top of the columns that I'm currently drawing in. And then anytime I find something to check out or actually consume a piece of media, I can put a tick or a cross in the relevant column to denote what kind of media it is. The media title will go beside this. This spread is done though, and flipping on over, we're getting to my next journal spread. Effectively, this is a place to write down notes about what I want my next journal to look like, so not the one we're currently working in, but the one that I use after it. Just so that while I'm actually using this journal here, I have a go-to space to write those things down so that I have them in mind when it comes to planning the setup of the next journal. This is something that I like to do in all of my everyday journals. And on the left-hand side, we've just got a place to write out some notes, so things like what I did like, what I didn't like, any thoughts or musings that I have about the next one. The space at the bottom is a place to write out a list of the layouts that I want to include, and then the entire page on the right is dedicated to thumbnails of the pages that I'll be setting up. This is helpful for when it comes to ordering the pages of the setup, thinking about how I want the layouts to look in general, that kind of stuff. And it's something that I did in preparing the journal we set up in this video. You may have seen that when drawing out those thumbnails, I did accidentally overextend one of my lines, but it's nothing that a white gel pen can't fix. That one, along with any of the other supplies I used in today's setup, is linked in the description box below. And if you happen to find yourself down there, and if you got any good ideas from this video, I would love it if you subscribed and became part of our team. We would love to have you. Flipping through the pages we set up today, I am super chuffed with how this turned out. I just think that the combination of the simple lettering and the buffalo plaid and those little branch designs is really pretty, and I hope you liked it too. If you did like this setup though and wanted to see more, I have a whole playlist of new bullet journal setups that you are going to love, so click or tap on that one and I'll see you over there.